Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Stellium Astrology podcast. I'm Stephanie James, your host, and today I am sitting in my car again. I found a nice quiet spot. Ewan is hopefully going to have a bit of a nap because he's got teeth coming through and he's not sleeping very well at the moment. And that means I'm not sleeping very well at the moment either. If you've just joined us and it's the first time that you're here, I'm Stephanie James. I'm an astrologer. I'm the founder of stelliumastrology.com. Obviously, I'm hosting this podcast. I used to write horoscopes for Elle magazine in the UK, and I also teach the odd class here and there for the London School of Astrology. And I believe I'm doing a lecture on behalf of the London School of Astrology for the Astrological Association conference, which I believe is in September this year. I think I'll be doing an online slot, but I'm not entirely sure. Still waiting to hear back on that and find out which one of my talks they've decided to select, because I put in a few different suggestions. It's usually asked that you submit a few subjects and then they pick the one they think sounds most interesting. So who knows what they'll pick? We'll find out, and I will share with you guys what I'll be talking about when it comes to it. But today, I just wanted to talk about the really interesting events that occurred earlier this week with Will Smith and Chris Rock. And Will Smith basically giving Chris Rock a very hard slap across the face on live television at the Oscar ceremony, the Oscars. I didn't even know the Oscars was happening. There's a lot of people that think that this was staged because, it didn't get very good viewing figures and that sort of thing. So, it's one of those things where, it's debatable because, I didn't even know that the Oscars was even happening, and they said that viewing figures have been really rubbish and that kind of thing. But, I just can't imagine, doing something like that. People are going to have an opinion about it, aren't they? So, it's like you'd have to be agreeing to sort of tarnish your reputation in a way, wouldn't you, really? And then they said that there's a history between Chris Rock and Jada Pinkett-Smith because apparently she'd said something to him before. They had a little sort of tit for tat kind of thing previously, but I don't know exactly what it was over. And so, there could be this history thing. I don't really know, to be honest, but it was all very much a shock. It was a big shock. It was basically pretty much the only thing that anybody spoke about for a good, I think, when did it happen? Did it happen on Monday? Sunday night to Monday? So I think that, in the UK, we all woke up to it. My best friend texted me and went, "Oh my God, Will Smith has slapped Chris Rock." And I'm like, what? It's the most random thing. So let's have a look I've got some pictures on my phone, because the good news is that Chris Rock's birth chart is on astro.com, and it is so it's rated B. It's got a B rating, and we've got Jada Pinkett Smith. She's got an A rating on astro.com. And what else do we have here? We have Will Smith, who has an A rating as well. So just to share with you some thoughts of my own personally. Firstly, one of the things that I really love about Chris Rock is that, because I'm a really massive, I love Will Smith as well. I'm a big fan of them both. I've been watching The Fresh Prince since it was on TV. Back in the 90s, I used to get back from school and I used to sit down and watch it. That was just my thing. I used to love it. Kind of grown up with Will Smith. He's kind of always been in my mind. He's always been part of the sort of, don't know what you would call it, the collective consciousness as far as he's always been in films. He's just always been quite a mainstream person who, I've always enjoyed everything he's done, really. I've kind of enjoyed the films he made, the music he made, the TV shows he made. He just seemed like a really nice, normal guy. I don't know, in my opinion, I thought he was quite nice and normal. Chris Rock as well, like, you know, he's been around for a long time as well, and you know, he's so incredibly sharp, such a great wit. They're both very witty, both, you know, just really great. I think it's really sad actually that it's happened, because I like them both so much. But yeah, I think if I like, might be a divisive thing to say, but if I was absolutely forced to pick somebody who I liked more, I think I'd pick Chris Rock. I just think he's great. I just don't know what it is. I think he's great. He made this documentary quite a few years back now, called Good Hair, and it's basically based on the fact that one of his daughters came in and said to him, "Daddy, I want to have good hair." And he went, "What's good hair?" And she basically pointed to, like, you know, white women with like long straight hair, or like, you know, like pictures of like, you know, Afro-Carribean women with like their hair relaxed. And so he decided to make a documentary on like the black hair industry, and how, like, what, you know, basically the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the impossible kind of images that it kind of projects for the unattainable beauty standards. That's what I'm looking for. And, you know, it's expensive for women with Afro hair to maintain and look after their hair. It's not like Caucasian hair. By the way, I'm also a trained hairdresser, and I trained in Afro-Caribbean hair as well, because where I came from, you know, I come from a very, very diverse part of South London, and I just assumed that if I worked in a hairdressing salon, it would be worth my while learning how to do Afro-Caribbean hair as well, because I just thought, you know, it's like, you know, it's just such a, you know, a multicultural and diverse part of the country, part of London, really. I mean, you know, it was quite a long time ago that I did this, so I haven't done, like, didn't study it like full on. Like I did it was like level 2, I think I did. I did like some aspects of Afro-Caribbean hair, like putting in extensions, and I didn't do relaxing hair or anything like that. But, you know, I, you know, have handled and worked with lots of different techniques for that hair type. So I think it's quite, you know, I've always been very fascinated with hair in general. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's like my Gemini ascendant, and it just, you know, that mercurial nature to my chart. But I just, you know, I'm interested, and I love like watching hair tutorials, and it doesn't matter if it's Caucasian hair or Afro-Caribbean hair. I find it fascinating, basically. So, you know, watching this documentary that Chris Rock made was really interesting, because I learned a lot about the black hair industry, and, you know, like how expensive it is for anyone wanting to do anything with like Afro-Caribbean hair. You know, even just to have it like natural requires work. And it's not the same as like, you know, for like Caucasian hair, you just wash it, you can like leave it to dry naturally and just get on with your day. There's still an awful lot of products that have to go into like making the hair happy and in good condition, even if you're just going to leave it and let it be natural, if you've got like Afro-Caribbean hair. And, you know, then if you want to go for this unattainable beauty standard of having like sleek, straight, relaxed hair, you have to put, I think, something like sulfuric, is it sulfuric acid? I'm sure it's sulfuric acid on the hair. Like, it's really, really, really harsh stuff. And if it gets in contact with the scalp, it can eat into the skin, and it can actually like cause baldness and permanent scarring. And not to mention that the fumes are highly toxic and incredibly bad for you to inhale. And then on top of that, like, you know, if you don't want to do that, then you've got things like having a weave, which, you know, is also a long process. If you've got Afro-Caribbean hair and you want to do something with your hair, 9 times out of 10, if you're going to the hairdressers, you're going to be going there for the whole day. And then you've got to think about like the expense that it would cost to have your hair done, buying the hair, the different quality of hair you're going to get. And so, you know, it's a really great documentary. I cannot emphasize enough, if you haven't watched it, I actually watched it not that long ago again on Prime. I think it's only like £2.50 on Prime or something. And I think I watched it last year. I said to Chris I really wanted to watch it because, you know, I just wanted to, I don't know, I just really love that documentary, and I've been saying to him for ages, we need to watch it, it's so good, you just won't believe it. It's just like, you know, like the twists and turns that he goes on his journey to discovering what good hair is, and you know, in the eyes of, you know, his children, and, you know, I guess like media, and what the image that they're portraying basically of what, you know, good hair is for you know, women with afro hair. So we, you know, I don't really want to go into it in too much detail and ruin it, but it goes into like a sort of a sense of corruption as well in the industry, and where, you know, if you're thinking about like, you know, systemic racism and how things have been designed in favour or to exclude the I don't know how to sort of like phrase this, like to exclude any person of colour kind of really benefiting from, you know, their own kind of industry in a sense. You know, it turns out that, like, you know, the people that are making the most money out of the black hair industry are white people or Asian people. So it's like, it's just insane. And then like where the hair comes from, just amazing. Definitely watch it on Prime. It's an incredible documentary. I think Chris Rock did a great job of like putting it together and making a case. And it's just like, it's got humour, it gets serious. And what the point I'm going into so much detail about this is that I find it fascinating that this argument centres around hair, because with Will Smith going up and hitting Chris Rock, he actually did it because Chris Rock made a G.I. Jane joke about Jada Pinkett Smith, referencing the fact that she's got a shaved head, when the reason she's been shaving her head, unbeknownst to me, and I think probably quite a lot of people had no idea, she actually has alopecia. Alopecia can be caused by a variety of things. It can be, you can have something called traction alopecia, which is where if you have had your hair weaved a lot, or if you've had a style, what we call from where I come from, the Croydon facelift, which is where you scrape the hair back so tight that it actually pulls the hair at the root and it weakens the root, and then eventually the hair comes out and potentially won't grow back again. So you have like these areas where the hair's just literally, the scalp is damaged. Or it can be like, you know, a type of hair loss, like male pattern baldness, for example, and that kind of thing. There are multiple reasons why somebody would get alopecia. Stress as well as a cause. A friend of mine had lovely, thick, abundant hair when she was younger, and then eventually her hair just, like, she used to complain about her hair being so thick she could barely get a brush through it. And then her hair just started dropping out. And, you know, her hair was so fine. She was very, very insecure about it. So I understand that this is not a laughing matter. It's not a laughing matter. It's obviously not very nice for men, but men do sometimes take the mick out of each other and call each other baldy and stuff. But if a woman's losing her hair, it's a very, very, very sensitive subject. The hair on a woman's head is like her crowning glory, if you think about it, essentially. It's a thing of beauty, really. So it must be an incredibly difficult subject for Jada to be experiencing alopecia. And Will Smith, you know, at one point you can see him having a little laugh at the joke, but then the next thing you know, he's walking up to the stage. Now, we've got 3 birth charts. I don't know whether or not I'm going to be able to go into it in too much detail, because obviously, you know, it's, you know, this is a podcast here that I'm doing, and it's, you know, I'm already like 13 minutes, 14 minutes into the recording, and I haven't calculated the charts on my phone. So what I'll do is I will look at the current transits, and I'll just have to be switching through. What I've got is, I'm looking at the current transits on my astrology app, and then I'm going to have to sort of like chop and change between them. But just before I go on, there was a few astrologers had a few things to say about this, and one of them is Naomi Bennett, and she is somebody who does moon wobbles in astrology, and I find her insight very, very interesting. She's always very intriguing, and she's commented, she's actually got the time that it happened. Apparently it happened about 7:35 in LA, so that's March the 27th 2022, Sunday 7:35 p.m. Pacific, or PDT, I don't know what's that, Pacific daytime, I don't know, and Los Angeles, California. So that's universal time plus 7 hours, if that's anybody curious to know. And Will Smith's chart is 25th of September 1968. He was born at 9:47 p.m. And that's in Philadelphia, PA. So Naomi has calculated a chart looking at the transits that occurred at the time that he actually hit Chris Rock. And it's a very interesting, this is another way to look at astrology in action. Now, the reason I did these astrology in action episodes is because I wanted you to think about what is happening that may be causing you to have sort of like unconscious or subconscious reactions, or, you know, the thing is, when things happen to you, you can choose to act or react. If you're reacting, you are not thinking. If you are acting, you are engaging your mind before you allow things to escalate. And it can be very difficult spotting that moment and that opportunity that you don't have to react. Some people are naturally very controlled and very good at controlling their temper and their actions, whereas others do tend to be swept away in the moment, and almost those are the people usually that think that life just happens to them, whereas the people that choose to act in a certain way are often able to understand that they have a choice. Now, the reason I'm going into that basically is because if you're out of tune with what's happening in the heavens, you are more likely to react than to have a choice in your actions. And it looks like for Will Smith, the interesting thing that occurred is that at the moment that he hit Chris Rock, the moon was on his midheaven. So Will Smith has got 7 Gemini rising, 7 degrees and 40 minutes of Gemini rising. He has a sun. His sun is at 3 degrees of Libra, and his moon is at 21 degrees of Scorpio. Something me and Will Smith have in common is that I have a Gemini ascendant, I have a Scorpio moon, and I have an Aquarius midheaven. Now, it's really interesting that at the time that this happened, the moon was at 14 Aquarius, so bang on his midheaven. It's 14:59, so it's just about to go into the 15th, like to 15 degrees. And Mars is up there in Aquarius at 16 degrees. Now, Aquarius is the opposite sign to Leo, and Leo is a sign of hair. The other thing is that he was there with a bunch of other celebrities at this ceremony. I think why the Aquarius emphasis I think is interesting is because he was in a situation where Chris Rock was doing what he does, which is basically roasting people for a living. You know, like going in, taking the mick, telling jokes, making everybody laugh, and usually at somebody's expense, because that's what comedians do. Never sit in the front row is a general rule. When you go to a comedy club, don't sit in the front row unless you want to get roasted. And basically hair is kind of the trait of the opposite sign of Leo. Although, you know, in Aquarius, hair can be wild, wacky hair. If you ever meet somebody who's an Aquarius or Aquarius rising, for example, they'll usually be notable by their wild mane, not necessarily like good hair, flowing locks, but sometimes they're rather unusual, kind of look like they've been electrocuted style, or they could be like a Saturnian Aquarian that's like quite poker straight, or very, straight as an arrow type thing. But yeah, so Aquarius is the opposite sign, but also they're at an award ceremony where everybody's there. There is an element of competition, so you think about that moon Mars, and they're all hoping that somebody, they're there because they've all got that common interest of A, the fact that they're all actors, and B, that they all are there to see who's going to be the crowning glory, who's actually going to have been awarded, given an award for their acting skills. So there's that Aquarian kind of getting together with like-minded people. But having Moon Mars there and Moon on his midheaven, and then you've got Venus and Saturn both at 21 degrees. Venus very, very close with Saturn there, closing in to be what we call exact, like partile basically. So they're at the exact same degree. And they're all sitting in Aquarius together, and the moon is making its way so that it can move past, Mars, Venus and Saturn. So that's interesting. And it's sitting on Will's career point. So It's his most visible point of the chart. It is the most elevated area. Anything that happens when it happens on your midheaven is kind of there for everyone to see. The moon is the woman in his life. Mars is his competitive nature. It's the way he asserts himself, the way he channels his anger and frustration. It would be suggested that usually, particularly for somebody like a Gemini rising with, when Mars is in Aquarius, often the way to channel anger is through intellect in some way. However, he doesn't natally have Mars in Aquarius. He has it in Virgo, actually. He's got a stellium in Virgo. He's got Mars, Jupiter, Pluto and Uranus all sitting in Virgo. And then he's got Sun in Libra, which is kind of attached to that as well. So he's got quite a little cluster. But yeah, his Mars isn't necessarily one that we would have thought we'd have met in this way. It's very low down in the chart. It's very, very hidden. And it's in Virgo, which is a very humble and not particularly braggadocious or extroverted sign. But Mars is Mars, and when it's provoked, it can reveal itself. And unfortunately, on this occasion, Will's moon at 21 degrees Scorpio was being squared by Saturn and Venus pretty much exactly. So there's this kind of sense that Venus was meeting up with Saturn, squaring his moon. He was there because he's going to be awarded for some of the hard work that he's done and for recognition, which he later received in the same award ceremony. I don't actually know which film it was for now. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure it will say in one of these things that I'm sharing with you. But actually, this Mars and Venus squaring his moon and Neptune, really. Neptune's at 24 degrees. So that's occurring. He's also got Jupiter, which is approaching a conjunction with Neptune, and that's trine his moon as well. So that can be like a very easy outlet. And unfortunately for him, it was on like live television for all to see, and it pretty much went viral and memes were made and everything. So that's, trine his moon as well. And, the moon is the most hidden nature. And when a Scorpio gets triggered, particularly a Scorpio moon, they can strike out, and it can be quite shocking. Because they are usually very good at hiding their emotional nature and being very, very closed. But if you catch them out, they can take you by surprise, and they can be quite, they can attack and be quite vengeful. So, it's interesting that that Saturn and Venus come together. And if you think about that, it's like the story is about this kind of Venusian issue of, he's protecting his relationship, the woman in his life. This is an issue about her lack of self-esteem around her hair, potentially. If we're filling in the blanks here, the fact that this is obviously something that is a very difficult subject for her. So this Venus and Saturn together, Saturn takes away that kind of flourishing nature of Venus, and instead is a source of insecurity, it can be. If we look at it like that. And then we've got the moon sitting on his midheaven. Again, this is another goddess, another feminine planetary placement, and in conjunction with Mars as well. Mars in the mix is this kind of brewing, bubbling, angry combination feeding into that moon, which when that moon understands that somebody, the moon is the ruler of Cancer, and we know that Cancer is extremely protective over its brood, over its clan. And then if we think about the fact that it's in Scorpio, it's not only is it protective, but it will take revenge. It will take its revenge. So we've got this sense of, all of this stuff feeding in, this very, very loaded issue that apparently on the surface doesn't seem even remotely offensive. Like, the joke went over my head. I was like, I don't even understand what that joke was. Like, it had to be explained to me because I didn't understand what on earth I'd missed. But obviously, to those in the know, this is something that's about femininity. It's about, protecting your family, your loved ones from an issue that obviously goes very, very deep. This kind of issue of like a lack of self-esteem. And it's this honour of protecting the woman in his life, So it's a very interesting stellium, which fed into Will Smith's most public place of reputation. And, you know, like we said, he also earned an award that night. So that Saturn sitting up there with Venus tightly conjunct, which is hovering around Will Smith's midheaven, rewarded him for his hard work that he's done. But obviously now this is hanging over him because his reputation, I think, was equally, do we say it was tarnished? I guess it was tarnished on the same night. So, yeah, he did apologise. But yeah, it's a very interesting situation. And Naomi says, you know, the lunar nodes are on his Neptune and Moon and squaring Saturn. So as far as the nodes are concerned, wherever we see the nodes in astrology, they can trigger events, particularly if you've got planets that are squaring. So Saturn is square the nodes at about 24 of Scorpio and Taurus, which are transiting past Will's Moon and Neptune conjunction. In fact, they're on his Neptune at the moment. And actually, like I said, you know, you've got Jupiter, Neptune by transit coming together in the sky. And that also is, you know, trine the nodes and sextile. So trine the south node, trine the south node, sextile the north node, and actually trine his Moon Neptune conjunction. So that's a really interesting thing. She says here, Naomi says, here, a career peak and a heated macho display all rolled into one night. Exactly. So very interesting. And the fact that Will Smith is a Libra as well, and he was like acting out on behalf of the woman, you know, his relationship, you know, very, yes, it's macho, but very Libran in its nature for what it was that was occurring. You know, and he's got like, you know, he's got Mercury and Venus in Libra as well. So, you know, like, it's no surprise that Will Smith is a very well-loved person, and pretty much up until quite recently, you know, was very private about his sex life and about anything that occurred in his personal life. And, you know, now we're suddenly seeing a lot of his personality and the truth about the success behind his happy marriage and things like that in a very public way. So that was interesting. And then who else have we got? Somebody else, another astrologer called Maurice Fernandez. Oh yes, so here it says he went on to win Best Actor for King Richard movie. So everybody, like, astrologers like to have a little look and have their opinions about what happened. So Maurice has got the event down at 7:30 p.m. rather than 7:35. And he's pointing out that the sun at 7 Aries is actually on Will Smith's natal north node in Aries, which is an interesting observation too, because it highlights that masculinity aspect, the event as it unfolds. He also highlights Chris Rock's chart, because let's go and have a look at Chris Rock's chart quickly. Where is it? Oh, right, yeah. So, sorry if you can hear me moving charts around on my phone. So Chris Rock, his birthday is the 7th of February 1965 at 10 o'clock a.m. in Andrews, South Carolina. And his birth chart rating is a B. And according to this, he's a double Aries with an Aquarius sun. So he's got sun at 18 Aquarius, and moon at 27 Aries, and 19 Aries rising. So, and actually he's got a T-square as well between Jupiter in Taurus, Neptune in Scorpio, and apexing at his sun in Aquarius, which is an interesting T-square. Now, if you don't know what I mean by T-square, I've done aspects episodes before, but it's a very, very volatile and very explosive aspect configuration, which can be triggered by transiting planets. Now, as mentioned, he's an Aquarius. He's got Venus and Mercury in Aquarius, just like me, and he's got Sun. So his Venus and Mercury are at Venus at 2. Me and Chris Rock have a shared Venus. No wonder I love him. And his Mercury is at 6. Okay, I think I've got Mercury at 2 and Venus at 3. And then, his Sun's at 18. So not too far from my natal Mars, actually. Hence that explains probably why I like him. And yeah, so what's interesting is that Chris Rock will have those planets hanging around. So I think Venus and Saturn were sitting around his sun. So Venus and Saturn were at 21 degrees. And then where were the other planets? It was the moon, and so the moon was at oh gosh, my brain is not working. Where is it? Yeah, so the moon was at 14 and Mars was at 16. So that's interesting because let's move back to his chart again. Told you I'd be looking at charts like this. It's probably not the best way to do it, but they're literally sitting around his sun, and then that's square his Neptune and square his Jupiter, because Jupiter is at 17, Neptune's at about 19. So it's being really triggered by that transiting Aquarius stellium again, which is very interesting. And actually, Chris Rock has got Mars in Virgo too. His is Mars retrograde. That's interesting because Mars retrograde is like, it's actually closer to the Earth when it's retrograde, I believe. So it's, if you can imagine, it's more, you can feel the heat of Mars more when somebody's got Mars retrograde. It's like somebody's turned the heat up. So with Chris Rock, his Mars is in intellectual Virgo, and that must be the quick wit, especially because it's communicating with his Venus and Mercury in Aquarius, because it's trine, but they're just in the next sign. So his Mars is in late Virgo and Venus and Mercury are just in the early stages of Aquarius. So that is the quick wit. That is really the really quick-wittedness of him. So yeah, you can see that's basically, and the fact he's got an Aries moon as well is interesting, because that also feeds into that kind of Aries nature of the evening, with Will Smith's North Node being there at 7 degrees. Oh, Will Smith has got Saturn at 23 degrees, and Chris Rock's moon is at 27. So you can see that there's like, sometimes these things kind of play out in a kind of an interesting way. They sort of feed into other people's charts, feed in, and this is where you get brought together to have shared moments, which can be really positive, or they can be really I don't want to say like negative, but like they could be like a bit of a setback in a way. But the fact that Chris Rock was able to kind of stop and say, like, make a joke, he was like, quite possibly the best evening of television on record, or something like that, he said. And I was just like, wow, he just got slapped round the face by Will Smith. He's literally like, what happened? And then he just cracked a joke. You're just like, wow, that is somebody with a kind of ethic of the show must go on. That is a literal expression of that. So that was interesting. And another astrologer called Yasmin Boland, she's the author of the Moonology books, if you've ever seen the Moonology books advertised. They come out every year. I met Yasmin when we were in India. In fact, I was in India with Maurice Fernandez as well. The only one I haven't met is Naomi Bennett, and I'm sure I'm going to meet her at some point. But yeah, Yasmin was saying that somebody, here I'll quote it from her Facebook post, "I've just seen someone talking about the whole Will Smith debacle and more or less putting his actions down to his Scorpio moon and or his Gemini rising. WTF? This is complete and utter BS. We are all born with a set of planetary placements and aspects. What we do with them is up to us. People with a Scorpio moon do feel all their feelings very intensely, for example, but in no world are they destined to resort to violence. If anything, they're more likely to bottle up their emotions. Gemini rising people are more likely to talk you to death than beat you to death." That's just FYI, you guys. I am a Gemini rising with a Scorpio moon. But that's actually even beside the point here, she continues. What we all saw was an act of enraged violence. We can't write it off to his moon sign, his rising sign, or even as defending his wife's honour. Think of all the children around the world who just saw one of Hollywood's most successful actors walk up on stage and belt Chris Rock across the face. What kind of message are we giving them? Next thing, people will be saying boys will be boys and he's just a lovable rogue. Okay, that's Yasmin's opinion, but it's very interesting again, isn't it? But yeah, you know, you can't just put it down to like simple planetary placements and say, oh yeah, Scorpio moon and Gemini rising, of course he's going to do that. That is very much a cop-out as far as like trying to give any kind of articulating any kind of common sense when it comes to understanding people's actions in a psychological, astrological sense. And if you are somebody who's interested in psychology and counselling, you'll know that it's not that simple. And when it comes to this branch of astrology, where we're into psychological astrology, you can see far deeper into a person's soul looking into the chart than if you're just sitting in a room trying to unpick some of the cryptic things that come out their mouth. I'm not saying that counselling doesn't work, it's just that astrology seems to get to the core of the issue a lot quicker. But yeah, Jada, just looking at her chart, so she's got Mars in Aquarius, Mars and North Node in Aquarius at 12 degrees and 26 minutes of Aquarius. And this, just so you guys know, her chart is 18th of September 1971, born in Baltimore, MD, and the time 12:38 p.m. She's got a stellium in Virgo, so she's got Mercury, Moon, so she's born on a new moon, Mercury, Moon, Sun, and I can't work out which one comes first. Is it Venus or Pluto? Pluto at 29 Virgo, Venus, and Venus at 1 Libra. Oh, so her Venus is on Will's Sun, and it looks like her Chris Rock's Mars might be on her Sun, which might explain some of the history with those two. Yeah, it might also, you know, the Sun is the ruling planet of Leo, which is obviously the sign that is connected with having a big thick mane of hair. So his Mars prodding at her Sun could also be part of that animosity that may have been already between them prior to this incident. But yeah, there's, you know, the synastry between them all. So her Mars is at, what did I say, 12 degrees of Aquarius. And if we go back and have a look again at that chart of the moment, the moon was on her Mars. So she was having her Mars return around that time as well. See, it's very interesting. So it's worth having a look at all of their charts and thinking about the planets that were passing. If we were going to say, look at the chart of the moment, you know, let's have a look at what's going on, you'd have no doubt that something interesting would happen. You'd look at the chart, you'd definitely look at Will Smith's chart and say, this looks like a chart that's going to win an award tonight. You'd sort of think that. You might look at Chris Rock's chart and go, oh, he's got a lot of stuff going on there. When you put all of their charts together and start, you know, understanding it on a, you know, on a multi-dimensional level, before you've even looked at the transits, they've got interesting synastry. We call it synastry relationship astrology. But when you add the transiting planets, that's when you can start telling the story. Anyway, I you know, hope I've presented an interesting and current episode for you today. If you've enjoyed it, please take your phone out your pocket and just give me a review on Spotify. Just go onto my main podcast page and there's a little thing with 3 dots. If you just press that button, then it'll give you an opportunity to review my podcast. Apple Podcasts also, you can review me on, and you can actually give me a little rating as well there. And if you'd like to be on the podcast, you can submit your chart details by joining up to my mailing list, which you can do through my website, www.stelliumastrology.com. And you can also join the waiting list for readings. I am contacting people and letting them know that they can book in with me now. And I always urge people to make sure that they add my email address, stephanie@stelliumastrology.com, to their trusted senders, so that when it comes to receiving emails from me, I hopefully won't end up in the spam folder. Anyway, you may have just heard that Ewan has woken up, and I am now going to take him indoors and maybe have a little something to drink, a nice little cup of tea, and maybe a little nibble, maybe a biscuit or something. What do you reckon? Okay, you guys, take care, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye now.